You have to have that ability to be in the moment, to think ahead, to punch the emotion. It's constant chaos.
Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses, and each week I talk with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets. Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas we all can apply to our own lives, personally and professionally. Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people. Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. This week, my guest is A's play-by-play announcer, Jenny Cavnar. In 2024, Jenny became the first woman in Major League Baseball history to serve as a team's primary play-by-play voice. And Jenny's season in Oakland was historic for other reasons as well. It was the A's final season in Oakland after 57 years, and it came with a range of emotions for the team's millions of fans who watched and listened to Jenny from their living room each and every day. Jenny navigated the unprecedented situation with poise, empathy, and extraordinary grace. She drew upon nearly 20 years of experience as an MLB broadcaster and a lifetime around the game. Jenny was born into a baseball family, with a father who coached high school baseball for 36 years and won 2 state titles. Jenny began her career working in local broadcasting roles and then coached 2 seasons at UCLA as an assistant coach for the women's lacrosse team. Then it was back to broadcasting. Jenny spent nearly 5 years as a reporter and anchor covering the San Diego Padres, and then 12 years covering the Colorado Rockies, where she was the team's backup play-by-play announcer, hosted the team's pre- and post-game show, and served as a reporter for the team's regional TV work. Through it all, Jenny has become widely considered one of the best in the business. She is a 5-time Emmy Award winner, and in 2021 was named the Colorado Sportscaster of the Year by the National Sports Media Association. Jenny and I were recently introduced by a mutual friend, and we recorded the conversation you are about to hear back in late November. Our conversation is a powerful behind-the-scenes look at Jenny's trailblazing journey and many of the ideas, techniques, and mindsets powering her success. But this episode is about so much more than baseball and broadcasting. It's about self-belief, preparation, being where your feet are, rising to the moment, and so much more. It's jam-packed with ideas we all can apply to our own lives. And I hope you take away as much from this one as I have. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Jenny Cavnar. Jenny, where I want to begin, I want to go way back. In doing a little research on you in preparation for our conversation, I ran across a story that your parents told about a parent-teacher conference when you were a kid, where the teacher said, and I'm maybe paraphrasing a little bit here, but the teacher basically says, "We love Jenny, but is there any way you can get her to stop talking?" So I'm curious, other than that feedback from the teacher, did you know from an early age that you had a way with words and just that you were a strong communicator?
Yes, I think the report card in 2nd grade labeled me as a social butterfly, and I could never rid that from that moment on. I did. I mean, some people call it class clown. I think I realized at an early age, I enjoyed making people laugh. I enjoyed making them smile. I enjoyed having a conversation and feeling what they were feeling. And so I think just talking in general became something about my life that I was very passionate about at an early age. And obviously, as you continue to grow up and you get to middle school and high school and teenage girls, and at that time, we didn't have texting. We did not have cell phones, to age myself. So there was a lot of I can't wait to get on the phone and have a long conversation with somebody, or just be in the moment of learning about people through conversation and through communicating that way. And even it went as far, Andrew, as getting into college and realizing like I knew what I wanted to do. I want to be a broadcaster. I was in the business school at Colorado State. I was trying to branch out and figure out how to get that degree that, will really help me more in broadcasting. And the natural fit for teachers, for counselors was to point me to journalism. And I got in my first journalism class and I had to write a paper. I had to write something down. And I was like, no, where's the talking class? And hence the communication degree, because I learned really quickly, like, I don't want to write about it. I want to talk about it.
It's interesting. You also mentioned, and you've become world class at talking about so many wonderful things over the years, Jenny. I'm curious, you mentioned the business school as well. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I know from just interacting with so many people in your industry is that a lot of what you have to do when you're working your way up the ranks is market yourself and essentially build a business around yourself. Everybody takes different paths, but I'm curious, like, was that part of the design, or was that something that maybe you realized later on was going to serve you well, like having that business background paired with the communication sciences?
Yeah, I don't think at the time I realized how valuable it would be. I mean, I'll even take it a step back to high school. And, for those listening who might know what DECA is, I don't know if you were involved in DECA in high school, but I was a huge DECA nerd. And basically, like, being a business club in school, I was the president of our DECA club. I was the Colorado DECA student of the year. Like, I loved competing in those spaces where you had to go in, you had to make a presentation, you had to sell something. And it's funny now, as I'm in my 40s, like, I think about a sales job and like my hands get clammy. I can't imagine having to go sell something to make a living and know that I'm getting a commission off of it. And that's how we're making our money. But you're right. When you really like peel back the layers, I've had to sell myself my whole life. Like, that's what you are doing when you become a broadcaster, is you're really becoming a brand. You're selling a lifestyle of who you are. You're selling a team, for crying out loud. I mean, gosh, you want to talk about a sales job? My jobs in baseball were with the Padres before they were good, was with the Rockies during a time where things were pretty dry. And, obviously becoming the play-by-play voice of last year, the Oakland Athletics, who are now becoming the Athletics in a different city. There is a lot of selling, but in order to sell, you have to believe in something. You have to have a deep passion for it. And so I think in the area of broadcasting, in the area of sports, and specifically in the area of baseball, I do have a deep passion for those things. So it's easy, right, to sell something that you truly believe in, a product that you truly believe in. And so I think early on, I'm really grateful, looking back at my parents, the community that they built, that there was a deep belief in myself early on, that I was able to go out there and make that pitch on those early jobs, and trying to get those jobs and trying to create this brand of broadcasting that's become my life.
Speaking of baseball and developing a passion for it, I know you were born into kind of like a baseball family. Your father was a high school baseball coach for 36 years and a great one, 2 state titles to his name. But I also know that some of your like initial inspiration from a broadcasting perspective came from folks like Melissa Stark, who's an NFL sideline reporter, and local reporters. So I guess my question to you, Jenny, is like, was the baseball kind of like forced? Like, was that something that you felt you were forced onto? When did you feel like the baseball was something that like you developed a real authentic passion for?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I do think like sometimes you're just going through the motions, like it's part of your life. And I just assumed it was part of everyone's life. It really wasn't until I had an actual interview for a baseball job where I was getting asked questions like, do you know how to keep score? I'm like, yeah, I mean, doesn't everybody, right? It's just when it's innate to how you grew up, you just assume that a lot of people know that skill, or a lot of people know about that. So for me, the pursuit of broadcasting was exactly what you talked about. It was in what I visualized. It was in who I saw. It was really to the point of where representation matters, because I saw Melissa Stark on the sideline of then a Monday Night Football game. I said, that's what I want to do. It was my aha moment. My dad was in the room. My dad thought about it and was like, yeah, I could see you doing that. And fast forward, it was the visual at his game of Marcia Neville, the prep reporter, running onto the field, interviewing my dad after a big win. And I'm like, that's it. This is the job, right? That's the connection. But again, seeing Melissa doing it, it then became, when people asked me what I wanted to do, it was, I want to be a sideline reporter for football. Very specific to how I had seen that job act out. on the screen. And so I think for me, like, I don't think regional sports networks were a huge deal growing up. They became bigger in the 90s, maybe as I was in high school going into college, specifically around baseball. I think baseball and the regional sports network kind of took off at that time, but didn't watch women in baseball really. I think Jeannie Zelasco was doing maybe a pregame show for Fox that I saw her here and there. But it wasn't until that interview where I was like, oh, I do know a lot about baseball. I do have a deep history and background of baseball. And then getting the job in San Diego. And I will never forget the feeling of like getting ready for my very first pregame hit. It was a Dodger Padre game. So you think about rivalries and the atmosphere and the excitement and just being on the field and like literally like stopping to take it in and being like, this is what I was made to do. And having that feeling. And here I am 19 seasons later, still doing it and doing it in a space and a place that I never could have imagined back at that moment as a sideline reporter for the San Diego Padres.
I'm curious, do you still, at least once in a while, try to take a moment to take it all in, even though you're 18, 19 years into this now?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it ever gets old. I think when you do something you really genuinely love, there are plane rides that I will just stop and be like, oh my gosh, like I am on this chartered flight with these professional athletes and we're getting flown around the country. You'll be in a beautiful hotel and you'll be just in going about your day and your routine. And like, I'll be in the elevator and just like, oh my gosh, this is my life. Like, this is awesome. And I try to have those moments as often as I can because I don't ever want something to get so repetitive that you get bored with it. I mean, how can you get bored with all of those things, right? They're amazing. I think that the fortune that I have of being in this business for so long, there's so many wonderful perks. But I think where I really stop and think about it is the relationships that I've built in the industry and how lucky I feel to know some of these people. And so it might be, just to circle back to the beginning, it might be through talking, it might be through a conversation that I have with a counterpart that I get to see in a certain city, or we'll even get to go have coffee or a meal outside of the ballpark. And you just are like, so like physically, my body gets so excited about the idea that like I have these relationships because of the job and the path that have been forged before me.
I can't help, like, one of the words in my brain that just keeps rattling around, Jenny, is this idea of responsibility. I mean, if you think about the responsibility that you have, you're at the center of two incredible ends of the spectrum. I mean, you take the players, the coaches, the managers, the front office folks who construct these rosters and build these teams, like the work that they pour in on a daily basis to do their job, right, is absolutely remarkable and probably many times totally underappreciated by the general public. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got the fan, the community, that people who connect with sport, connect with teams, connect with individual athletes to take joy and like navigate their own emotions and navigate their own ups and downs through life. And you're like the connective tissue between all of that. I mean, does that responsibility weigh on you? Do you see that as an opportunity? Is it a combination of the two? I'm curious because like that's the word that keeps coming to mind. Like when I think about somebody like you and the role that you have, it's this immense responsibility.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things I realized early on in this career and it's a perfect word for it, is I think I get to be the eyes and the ears that are on the ground. And I also get to be the one through storytelling that connects fans who, let's be honest, like I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't a fan myself. Like I'm a huge sports fan. I grew up a huge Denver Broncos fan. I grew up in a town where sports matter. And so for me, I understand that responsibility of bringing stories, making sure I know all the stories to bring them in to the living room or bring them on the telecast so that fans feel more connected to their favorite players. It's why sometimes they enjoy a player. It's so cool to me when I'm at the ballpark and you hear a fan, specifically for me, it's a little fan that's like, I'll just use an example this year. Like, I love Mason Miller. What's not to love about Mason Miller? He throws 104 miles an hour. But why they love him is we've been able to really craft who he is as a person and make sure, going back to this marketing and sales degree, like make sure that he's being sold as a human being first. And he is an amazing human being. I mean, this is a guy who was really an underdog, like didn't know he was going to play professional baseball, didn't even know if he was going to have a college baseball career, ended up being diagnosed with diabetes. Like his whole world changed. And now what does he do? As a rookie player, he made sure in every single city we went to that he was meeting with families of kids that had been diagnosed with diabetes to give them hope, to give them inspiration, to tell them it's okay that you have to take your medicine. Don't be scared. Here's how I do it. Like, be a human and be a really good one because of the stage he's on. And so that's what I love about sports, especially professional sports, is when we can shine a spotlight on these people that are using their platform to do amazing things. And so I do feel that responsibility to connect. You also like, there's a side note to that now that I'm in the world of play by play is you have the responsibility of the moment. And so you can prepare and prepare and prepare and prepare, but you can't pre-rehearse the moment, right? You have to be in it and you have to live it. And the focus that it takes to do that sometimes in a baseball game, it can be hard. It can be really hard and daunting because you have to balance in your brain all these things that you prepared and the stories you want to share with how the game is going and how the timing and the pacing of it is. And I really like lean on those years of being a football sideline reporter because I think the preparation for that is you had to learn really early and really often is that you're not going to get the glory for many things. Like you're going to come to the table and you're going to produce, like, let's say for me, it was, I wanted to have 20 stories every Saturday for a football game. And they had to be stories that I didn't think that the play-by-play guys would get to, or maybe that I could add on to, or I could supplement with. So it wasn't the like no-brainer stories that you can just find. It was, you had to dig and you had to research and you had to bring them. So sometimes you get married to that because you've worked really hard to find the information, but you had to know that out of those 20 stories, by the time a college football game was done, you maybe got 4 of them in and you left 16 on the floor. And that's hard to do because you wanted to share them. You were so passionate about them. And so I think years of that training has prepared you for this moment where you can leave some information out, knowing you're not going to get to it, knowing it's probably still valuable and important. But also the way a baseball season runs is it's 162 games. Hopefully you will get to that story at some point down the line. It just might not be on this Tuesday night game in Tampa Bay.
What does that like mental focus and preparation and mindset look like for you? Like when you're preparing to do play by play, I mean, you've done your research. How do you get locked in and ready to go? And so you're able to leverage that information, but you're also able to adapt on the fly. Like it's got to be a unique level of focus.
It is a unique level of focus. I'll add into it in television, more so than radio as well, is you are also married to the visual of what's happening. So it's, to me, like sports television production is the ultimate team sport. You have the play-by-play person and an analyst and sometimes a sideline reporter as well. And those are the voices that what you say, how the telecast goes, like people put that on you. But there is an entire team of people, a producer, a director, a technical director, a graphics operator. There are people that are running video who have their own way of thinking about a game and they're putting together their own packages for you. And all these human beings have to work together to make basically one story, one voice come out. And again, it's my voice that's coming out, our analyst's voice, but there's so many people and so much thought that goes into it. And so I think your brain is divided sometimes in broadcast because I'm seeing things, but the television is showing the audience something else that I have to speak to. And sometimes my producer is talking in my ear about something coming up. And so you have to have that ability to be in the moment, to think ahead, to punch the emotion. It's constant chaos, really. But when it works, man, it's like the coolest feeling when it all comes together.
Speaking of emotion, there's probably no greater or there's no more emotional season in Major League Baseball history than what you all just experienced in Oakland this past year. I mean, your first season on the job with the A's, a historic season in so many ways. There's really no playbook for what you did and what you had to do in your first season in Oakland for, the franchise's last season in Oakland. Like, how did you connect with that, right? Recognize that you were new on the scene, but you had this incredibly historic moment to be a part of. How did you reconcile all that and make sure that you had that all balanced right?
It wasn't easy. I mean, there's so many things taking this job on paper that you can be like, okay, right? Like you're about to drive and you see your map and you put your destination in, and on the map, it's like hazard ahead, accident, might need to plan for this time. So, like, mentally, you can prepare for that. Well, what happens when you get to that accident and it's bigger than the map said? And now you're going to be an hour late to something and you're stuck in traffic in your mind. Like, that's kind of what happened to me. It was on paper, I could say all the things that were going to be a challenge, right? First female doing this job, check. The person doing this job before me was there for a very long time, and fans like what they like. So I now have to become a new voice in their living room. I've never been in this market before, too. Like, I've been in the Denver market, I've been in the San Diego market, the San Francisco, Oakland market. New me as a person, as a voice. So that was going to be hard. Oh, okay. Add on that this is a fan base that's really angry. Rightfully so. They're very angry. They're losing another team, right? Saw the Raiders leave for Las Vegas. They saw the Warriors go over the Bay and make a new arena in San Francisco. Now they know that this is it. This is their final professional sports team in town that after 6 decades of being there is leaving. That's anger, that's emotion, that's all of these things. So I knew that was going to be challenging, obviously. But there are so many things you can't anticipate. There's so many things you can't plan for. Going back to how you prepare for a broadcast, you can sit there, you can mull over research, you can do your due diligence, but like you also have to be in the moment. And so there were things that hit me at various points this season that I had to be in the moment. I had to live in that emotion. I had to kind of ride the roller coaster, really. Once they announced this job, I was strapped in, and the lows were low and the highs were high, and it was everything in between. And there was a lot of upside downs on that roller coaster. But like you have to play in my family dynamic. I mean, I have 2 young children. I am a mom. I am traveling now more than I've ever traveled in my career. But I also home more, which is strange than I've ever been home in my career during a baseball season, right? When I was doing the Rockies, we lived in Colorado. I'd travel with the team here and there, but we also had a studio show. So I'd be home at night, I'd be home in the morning. So we're dealing with that dynamic and how to make sure our children are comfortable. And I'm also the mental load of my family. Like, I have to plan who's taking care of my children when I'm gone. It's not always going to be my husband because he's a firefighter and he has 24-hour shifts and we're dealing with his schedule. And so there were so many things clouding a lot of the emotion all the time. And I still had to be game ready every night, right? Put on the game face. It's go time. You got to go. You got to go. No matter what social media was saying, no matter what my family was feeling, no matter the emotions I was going through. And so it was just this, I could take 6 months of a season and probably feel like I lived 3 years of life, and changes of life. And so I was very sensitive to fans and what they were feeling because I can't imagine that feeling. Again, I've never lost a team. I've never had that identity stripped away from me. And I think as fans, we pour so much into the identity of who we are. So what I relied on, obviously, was my broadcast partner in Dallas Braden, who was an Oakland Athletic. That's the only franchise and organization he ever knew. He grew up not far from there. But what a lot of people didn't know in me taking this job is my husband grew up with Dallas. They grew up together in the same town. My husband grew up going to Oakland A's baseball games. His grandmother was a huge Oakland A's fan. His mom was an Oakland A's fan. She had scorecards from the 70s that she showed me. I tried to take the emotion of their family, the emotion of friends that we had in that area, and live on that. I mean, even for me, growing up in Colorado, we didn't have the Rockies until I was 11. So we loved the Bash Brothers. Like, we had the poster in our bedroom. We loved Jose Canseco, Mark McGuire. I mean, Ricky Henderson, who didn't love that era of what that team was. And so I tried to really dig in on that. And at the same time, I wasn't going through that. And so I was very sensitive to those that were. I was not one of them, but I tried to, again, absorb the emotion and be able to relay it out. And a lot of that was dealing on, what Dallas was dealing with and his emotions. But I didn't realize how much we were all wearing, especially that final week at the Coliseum until we got on an airplane to go to Seattle and it just hit you like a ton of bricks. Like all that emotion, all those feelings, all the anger, but yet wanting to celebrate something that was so beautiful for so long there. And in the history of the game, what the Coliseum brought, the magic that it brought for so long. And again, I think our production team just did a fantastic job bringing all those pictures to life. But it was quite an emotional year. And my first year being the last of something, there's not a playbook on that. And now year two is going to be year one in a new city and having to usher in this franchise that goes all the way back to 1901 into its fourth city that it's being played in, eventually moving on to its fifth city in Las Vegas. So there's a lot of change ahead still that we have to embrace, that we have to be in the moment with. But when I look back on 2024, it's one day I hope I can really, really sift through all the emotions that came because there were a lot.
All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today. There's no question that you all navigated it so beautifully this year and did justice for all those fans and families and communities that the Oakland A's have meant so much to. Even though you've had some time to digest it, like I can still tell just in the last few minutes of the conversation how much all that emotion still weighs on you. And
Yeah.
the idea, I just think that story about your husband growing up with Dallas and being an A's fan and his grandmother having the scorecards, like it's always amazing to me. Baseball, like no other sport, finds a way to like connect generations and rear itself at these unique times in our lives. I'll kind of, not to divert us too far, but I'll tell you a funny story. And now that I think about it, it's got a little broadcasting component to it. So one of my first friends when I was born, we're growing up together. One of the things we like to do, I'll date myself here. We would take like cassette recorders, and we would put on a VHS of a game, then we put a cassette tape into a like tape recorder, and we record ourselves broadcasting games, or we record ourselves doing like radio talk shows. I grew up in the New Jersey area, so Mike and the Mad Dog were like the holy grail of like talk radio. And fast forward, it must have been 25 years at that point. I go out to Los Angeles for his wedding. So now like my first or second friend I've ever had in my life. This is how we spent our times. I go out to Los Angeles for the biggest day of his life. I go to breakfast in Los Angeles that morning of his wedding. And who's sitting in a booth in that restaurant is Vin Scully.
That's so crazy.
And I said to myself, like, what are the odds, right? That arguably the most iconic broadcaster in the history of sports is sitting here in this little deli while I'm trying to have breakfast on the day that my friend, who, like, whenever I think of our friendship as kids, it's baseball, it's sports. It's like trying to act like we were Mike and the Mad Dog or doing a local sports broadcast. It's just, and that was something that just I thought of as you were talking about that story. Like there are these unknown moments where sports connects different periods of our lives and rears itself in these really, really unique ways.
Oh, it does. I think that's the ultimate timeline for life. If you're a sports fan, it's the games, it's the memories of being there. It's what happened, it's the defeat even, right? Like remembering your team and this horrible loss, and that happened in this year when this friendship was forming, or when we were going on this vacation, or we were doing this. Like it is the backdrop to so many people's lives, and people build their lives around it, right? I mean, obviously as a kid growing up, when your dad's a coach, you build your life around sports. There's dinner time is not dinner time. It's maybe you're lucky if you get like to eat together as a family later that night, or you're eating at the ballpark, or it's the hot dogs at the snack shack, whatever it is. But to me, like those are memories and moments of how we created a bond and how we created family. And so I always love to, like the artistic look to me of baseball, and you mentioned it, like it is the relationships. One of my old broadcast partners, Ryan Spilborgs, always said like relationships are the currency in the game. And it's so true. And it's about like, for me, when you look at a baseball, when you imagine a baseball, it's two pieces of cowhide basically that are held together by stitches, right? And those red stitches, if you think about it, they're kind of the memories and the moments that like hold those relationships together. That's why I think it's so beautiful. It really is a magical space in forming relationships. And I think again, back to baseball specifically of any sport, it's America's pastime, right? It's generationally passed down. When you think about the first time you played catch, it was probably with your dad or your mom or your brother or your sister, or even just a friend in the neighborhood. But it's a connection. It's a connection to those people. And so it's like for the love of the game and how you see it and how you pass it down. And now that I have kids, watching it through their eyes, like watching which players they're attracted to or they want to root for, or who they fall in love with, or even like picking up baseball cards and them asking like, who's this guy, and then getting to tell a story about our generation of baseball. And my son the other day found my like very special baseball card collection. All that's in it is Ken Griffey Jr. cards. And he's like, who is this guy, mom? And so I got to tell him like all about Ken Griffey Jr. And he was like the Aaron Judge of our era, right? And like that's relatable to him now. And so he's asking all these questions about Ken Griffey Jr. and we watch old highlights. And like it's a magical moment when that like aha button clicks of like what sports is and how you see it and how you pass it along.
There's no question. I'm a lifelong Mets fan, and we've been anxiously waiting for our next World Series title. We had
a lot of tears. Yeah.
We had a great run this year, but my daughter, who's 9, this was the year that she picked up softball and she got more into the Mets and more into baseball. She loves playing softball and she loves watching the games. And I remember when they got eliminated this year by the Dodgers, how, everybody, that was like, you're sad, right? When your team gets knocked out, right? And you think they might do it. She comes down early the next morning and she's sad that they lost. But she's almost in tears. And I said, what's wrong? And she says, is Pete Alonso going to stay? And I said to her, I don't know. I said, well, she's like, where is he going to go?
Right.
Does it mean he doesn't like the Mets? And I said, well, there's a lot of things that have to work out. The Mets need to want Pete, and Pete needs to want the Mets. And there's a lot of people who are going to want Pete. And we got to figure this out. And we ended up like down this Google rabbit hole trying to figure out all the places he could go. And she said, well, does that mean the Mets are like the number one likelihood? Like she's asking all these great questions that nobody knows the answer to, at least as of the moment we're recording this. And it just like all of a sudden, it just didn't matter to me like what the result of the season was. To me, like what's so cool is how baseball can connect generations. It's just like you described there, like in that moment, that father-daughter connection, the red seams, as you described, like the two pieces of hide, like was just trying to figure out something small, right? Where is Pete Alonso going to go? Right. That was what meant the most to her in that moment. I just think that to me is like, it's what's so cool about baseball. It's what's so cool about sports in general. Jenny, as we get ready to start winding down the conversation, I'm curious, like, as you think about all that you've accomplished, like, is there one area that you feel like you have the most an opportunity for growth as a broadcaster, as a communicator? Like, have you thought about that?
Oh, of course. I think, a lot of times people ask you like, well, what do you want to do next? What's next? What's next? That's the generation we live in, right? Or that's the culture that we live in right now, is the instantaneous gratification of like, what's next? And I always reverse that question and say, what's now? And for me, what's now is this huge opportunity. I mean, I was doing play-by-play because someone saw something in me and suggested I do it. That doesn't happen at the major league level. And I know that, and I don't take that for granted. I understand that a lot of my counterparts for the other 29 teams that are the lead TV play-by-play probably spent time in the minor leagues, probably, were able to go down there and do 500 games before they ever got a sniff of a big league job. I wasn't afforded that. When I was growing up, there weren't females doing play-by-play, period. There weren't females doing play-by-play at the minor league level. And I'm so, so grateful that someone nudging me on the shoulder being a female producer that I had, saying, why don't you fill in? We have 10 games. We're trying to figure something out on the Rockies broadcast. Like, you should fill in. And having the guys that I work with as analysts on the pre and post game show backing her up as I was doubting what she was saying and saying, we sit here and talk about the game with you the entire game in between going on air for a pregame show and going on air for a post game show. Yeah, you can do this. This would be awesome. And me having to understand, and a group of us having to understand, it's not going to be traditional. It's not going to be textbook, right? It's going to be us. And it's going to be us putting our craft out there. And we had to be okay with that. And decision makers had to be okay with that. And I'm so glad they were. And I'm so glad they took that chance, because it opened up really a new career path for me. Something that I didn't even realize, like, I had met my ceiling in what I was doing and I needed a new challenge. And so going down this path and accepting it and knowing that there might be backlash to it, that there might be people that don't agree with it, and having to keep forging a trail where there wasn't one and keep going and keep pushing, keep moving. Well, what I did is look behind me, and there were women that all of a sudden were calling minor league games. And there's lots of them now. And in fact, one of them is Melanie Newman, who got the first job on Apple, who also does play-by-play for radio and TV for the Orioles. Like, that is what? Because one person in Allison B. Hill tapped me on the shoulder and said, you should be doing this. And I'm so, again, grateful just to be a person in charge of pushing a door open and knowing that that door is going to get pushed open wider and wider. And pretty soon, like, it's not going to get shut. There's just a trail going. And that's awesome. And it has little to do with me. And I think when I accepted this job, it took another decision maker and my current boss, Devin Fox, to say, you deserve to have a full-time job in this. And like, those words were like, what? Like, I do? I'm ready. I don't know if she knew I was ready. I don't know if I knew I was ready. I don't even know this season if you could say I was ready. But what I was willing. And what I was and what I continue to be is willing to show up every day and get better and know that this isn't my end result. Know that every game I'm going to collect new data. Every game I'm going to try and get a little bit better. And it's the old idea of anything you do in life. If you show up today and you get 1% better or 0.1% better than you were yesterday, you're growing. And I want to keep growing, and I want to keep moving forward, and I want to get better, and I want to be the best I can be in what I'm doing now, and know that those opportunities will continue to come and what's ahead. Because again, I was going to be a football sideline reporter, and that was 20 years ago. And this was not on the radar. So I don't want to pigeonhole myself to what might be on the radar next. I want the world to be open and really make sure that I'm doing all the work today and just being where my feet are. It's the hardest thing, right? Especially as a working parent, you know that. Be where your feet are. If I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids. If I'm at work, I'm at work. And so much easier said than done, because there's so much that can cloud your day, and it's not that linear. You can't just be a parent. You can't just be a worker. Sometimes it weaves, but I'm really, my goal and my focus when I wake up is be where your feet are.
Be where your feet are. It is so hard to do, as you said there, but it's so important. And I just can't help but think about, the idea that one person believing in you, right? Like that executive in San Diego who saw something in you that maybe you didn't see at the time or hadn't seen yet, that you could do baseball, or somebody believing that you could do play-by-play, and then folks that you worked with stepping up and saying, yeah, you could do this. Like, the power that one or a group of people have to encourage and lift others up is just so profound. I think you've got to have somebody at the center of it like yourself that's willing to put in the work and get that 0.01% better every single day. But you've got to look for those people around you who see things that maybe you don't see in yourself at the moment. I think that's such an important idea in your story too.
Oh, I think it's the most important thing. I think you have to find your people that believe in you, and you have to find the people that you're going to have the tough conversations with. And I think this day and age, especially as a broadcaster, if you look for your feedback online, you're never going to get better, right? Like, there's people that are within the same Twitter scroll. You're going to see someone that says you're the worst person to ever live, and you're going to see somebody that says, I love you so much, I want to be like you. Both those things should have the same exact weight. What should matter and what should value is the circle that you've built around you, right? The people that are going to be able to say, hey, you aren't your best today, but let's get better, right? Like, it's the ultimate thing, again, not to go back to parenting, but like, I'm just in it. We're at that age where it's like, how do I present something to my kid where it's allowing them to grow in a moment, finding growth opportunities? So who do you have in your life that allows you to grow, that forces you to grow, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable sometimes, and making that circle smaller than you'd think. I think when I was younger, it was you want to, especially me being a communicator, being a people pleaser as I am, your cast is large. You wanted to have more friends, you want to have more value, more meaning, and more circles. But like, it's okay as you get older to know that that can be pretty small. And who are the people that you're serving, right? Who do you make proud? Who will always be there for you? And so, just kind of really, really grateful that I've found that in my career. I found those people who will encourage me, who will breathe life into me, who will pick me up when I'm down, who will make me a better broadcaster. And so I think that's really important that you said that. Is I think all of us can be that for someone else too. When you search around, if you see something in somebody else, make sure you say it, because you never know how that's going to change their life.
There are so many people who are seeing you do what you do, and it's inspiring them to believe. And as we get ready to wrap up our conversation, Jenny, I feel like a lot of the discussion over the last couple of years in particular with women in sports in general and the Caitlin Clark effect and all these things that we're seeing, and your story, is people tend to gravitate to like, well, what does it mean to young girls who are watching? But I think it's all girls and all women of all ages. I've heard you tell a story about this year, a 68-year-old woman kind of camping out at the team bus waiting for you with tears in her eyes to tell you how long she had waited to hear a woman call her favorite sport. And I just have to believe that's different than we normally, I think about this. We think about like a young girl sitting watching Jenny Cavnar saying, I can be that, or I can be anything I want. And there is that. But then there's also all these people who have experienced decades and decades of a game, of something they love without hearing a voice that sounded like theirs. And like, what was that moment like for you? Like, talk about that.
Yeah, I think it just hits you like a ton of bricks, because you're right. And I'm grateful for all the conversations that I've had with young girls who inspired to now want to do this, or it's opened up a door to either just like sports or want to enjoy sports or want to eventually be a broadcaster, whatever the gamut is for them. I'm always humbled by it. But to hear a woman say that she has been a sports fan for so long and waited for her voice to be represented in the game she loves. I mean, man, that was like tears to your eyes, chills, all the things. Like, it gave you that generational value that like what I'm doing isn't just for the next generation. It's also for a generation that missed out on being able to have that. And so the other kind of area that I think is really cool that I often find, and it might be because of my connection with my dad and him bringing me into the sports fold, specifically into baseball, but it's when a dad comes up to me at a game and is like, thank you so much for allowing me to see what is available to my daughter. So it's not just like saying to a girl, like, you can do this. It's like also pulling a dad to be like, wait, I love baseball. I'm watching this. And now there's like a woman on my TV telling me about the things I love and I'm enjoying it. And I have a daughter and now I can point to her. Like, this triangle connection of like dads and daughters is like, it always gets me, right? It just like hits me in the heart. And so I think that's another cool example of, it's not just, again, it's not linear. It's like you're opening up this world to so many people just because it's a voice and a look that's different than anything we've seen in the game.
Jenny, thank you so much for this time that we've gotten to spend together. Your story is an inspiration to all. And I just can't wait to see all the things that you accomplish today and in the future by keeping your feet where your feet are and focusing on where you are in the moment, but trying to get a little bit better every single day like you have throughout your career. You are, no question, a certified tarp puller, forever a part of the Everybody Pulls the Tarp family.
I love it. Thanks for having me, Andrew. Appreciate it.
You got it, Jenny. Talk to you soon. Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.